Now, with the background of everything that we've gone through, Daniel 2 and Daniel 7, I want to go to Daniel 8. And you're going to quickly see that Daniel 8, though using different symbols, covers much of what we have already studied, but with a different emphasis, adding and enriching what we've already seen. Now, just as in Daniel 2 and in Daniel 7, Daniel 8 is divided into two main sections. It's a supernatural revelation, in this case a vision, followed by an explanation of the vision. And Daniel 8 starts out like this, simple enough. Okay? Daniel 8:1. In the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared unto me, even unto me, Daniel, after that which appeared to me at the first. Okay? 8:1. So as I said, the chapter starts out with the vision, as did the previous chapter, Daniel 7, which he might even be referring to here, because he talked about the vision which appeared to me at first. And if we read the chapter, we can see that in the vision of Daniel 8, 4 main elements appear, 4 main symbols. Because, as we've seen, these visions and dreams come first in symbols, symbols that are later interpreted. And as we've seen so far, much of what's being revealed to us here has to do with the rise and fall of great empires. And it's no different in Daniel 8. In the vision, Daniel 8, Daniel is first shown a ram. Then I lifted up my eyes and saw, behold, there stood before the river a ram. Okay, simple enough. He sees a ram. What next? And as I was considering, behold, a he-goat. Okay, after the ram, he sees a goat. What next? Daniel 8:9. And out of one of them came forth a little horn. So what comes next is a little horn power. After describing in detail, a lot more detail than given to any of the other powers, the activity of this little horn, the vision itself ends with this verse. Look at this verse. And he said unto me, unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. Thus, the vision of Daniel 8 consists of really 4 elements, just 4 elements. They are Daniel 8, a ram, a he-goat, a little horn, and the sanctuary cleanse. Again, please read the first 14 verses over until you can see this sequence. It is crucial. Now, sure, there are a lot of details in here that we can look at on the website. We don't want to deal with them now. But for our immediate purpose, the key issue here in Daniel 8 is the sequence of events. Catch this. A ram, a goat, a little horn, and the sanctuary cleanse. This has to be seen and understood for this prophecy to make sense. And fortunately, it's all pretty clear, cut and dry. A ram, goat, little horn, sanctuary cleansed. Okay, boom. Now, just as we saw in Daniel 2 and Daniel 7, this dream or vision, this is symbolic. Daniel 8's not about a ram and a goat and a little horn any more than Daniel 7 was about winged lions and leopards and so on. Or Daniel was really about a statue made of iron and clay in the feet. These are symbols, symbols of something greater than themselves. What then is Daniel 8 about? Well, as in Daniel 2 and Daniel 7, an explanation follows. What does it say? Well, the angel Gabriel comes in Daniel 8 and gives him an explanation of most of what followed. Now notice what Gabriel explained. He explains most, but not all of the vision. I'm going to hammer that in ad nauseum. What do we have? Gabriel comes and says, the ram which thou sawest having 2 horns are the kings of Media and Persia. Huh? Media and Persia? Didn't we come across that empire already? Of course, we did in both Daniel 2 and Daniel 7. And what do you know? Media Persia appears again in Daniel 8, only there's no guesswork. It is named. Gabriel comes right out and names the kingdom himself. Now, the logical question is, where is Babylon? Which we saw in Daniel 2 and Daniel 7. Daniel 8, however, skips Babylon and starts with Media Persia. Now, why would it do that? Well, let me give you the short answer. It has to do with the dating of the vision, which was near the end of the Babylonian Empire. I imagine that the Lord wanted to focus on the kingdoms that would follow and not waste time on Babylon, which was soon to be kaput and pass from the scene anyway. Okay, so the point is, we start out with Media Persia named for us, okay? What comes next? What was the goat, the next animal in the vision? And the rough goat is the king of Grecia, Greece. Greece? What do you know? The same power that we saw in both Daniel 7 and in Daniel 2. So what do we have? So far then, between Daniel 2, Daniel 7, and Daniel 8, we have Babylon, which was named in Daniel 2, then Medo-Persia, and then Greece, both of which named for us as well. So we've got 3 of the kingdoms named for us, okay? Now there's one more kingdom that arises in Daniel 8, the kingdom that follows Greece. A kingdom that follows Greece. What does Gabriel say? What is that little horn power depicted in the vision itself that arose after the he-goat, which arose after Greece? What was that? What does he say? He says, and a king of fierce countenance shall stand up and shall destroy wonderfully and prosper, and shall destroy a persecuting power, the mighty and holy people, but he shall stand up against the prince of princes, and he shall be broken without hand. So what do we have but another power, a persecuting power, one that destroys God's people, a power that arises after Greece, but then what? What does the explanation say? What does it say? It will be broken without hand. Without hand. Where did we see that before? A breaking without hand. Of course, it was the vision of Daniel 2, the stone that was cut out without hand that destroyed the statue. That is, it was the supernatural intervention of God at the end of the world. And the amazing thing is, a similar image is used here in Daniel 8 for the end of the little horn power, the final kingdom in the vision. Okay? You watched until, here's Daniel 2:34. You watched while a stone cut out without hands, which struck the image on the feet of iron and clay and broke them in pieces. That was Daniel 2. And then we have the same imagery here. Thus, there's a supernatural ending to the little horn power of Daniel 8, just as there was to the little horn in Daniel 7 and the statue in Daniel 2. Can you see the parallels here? Very closely linked. Now, notice something here crucial with me. This is important. The final power in Daniel 8 arises after Greece and extends to the end of the world where it is supernaturally destroyed. Again, what is the only power that could be? Of course, Rome. Just as in Daniel 2 and Daniel 7, the power that comes up after Greece remains until the end of the world, where it's supernaturally destroyed. It's the same power in all 3 chapters. Rome. In fact, let me share a few thoughts that help nail down this identification even more. Trust me, we'll have more of this on the website, but look at this with me. First, the vision itself, the ram is described as great. So Medo-Persia is depicted as a great power. The he-goat, which comes up next, is described as very great. So Medo-Persia is great. Greece is very great. It's greater, okay? Then this little horn power, this next power that comes up after Greece, is described as exceeding great. So whatever the power is that arises after Medo-Persia in Greece is greater than them both. Now, folks, you tell me. A power rising after Greece that is greater than either Greece or Medo-Persia? What is the only power it could be? Of course, Rome. Solely, totally, only Rome. What else? Greater than either Medo-Persia or Greece. Now, 2, look at the parallels. I want you to look at the parallels between the little horn of Daniel 7, which we saw was the papal phase of Rome. Now, though the transition from pagan to papal Rome is found in Daniel 8 as well, it's not as obvious as the others. Believe me, we will get into this on the website. The point is, in both chapters, though, the emphasis really is on the papal phase. Now, I want you to look at these parallels with me. Okay? First, both are depicted by the same symbol, a little horn. Both arise after Greece. Both are persecuting powers. Both are blasphemous powers. Both are supernaturally destroyed by God in the last days. Now, let's just be a little logical here. When you have 2 powers arising in the same sequence, with the same symbol, doing the same things, and pretty much ending in the same way, it's pretty clear that we are dealing with the same power. And that power is solely totally and only Rome, pagan and papal, though by far, the emphasis is on the papal phase. Now, what is the final element in the vision? As we saw, it was the sanctuary being cleansed. What is the final element in the explanation? What do you know? The same thing. This is what the last two verses say in the explanation. In other words, right after describing, after you got one power, then another, then the little horn power, the explanation says the following. And the vision of the evening and morning, that's Daniel 8:14, was told as true. And I was astonished at the vision and not understood it. Now, I cheated a little by putting Daniel 8:14 in there. But at first glance, one would say, what does that have to do with Daniel 8:14? But see, that's easy to see because Daniel 8:14 reads more literally, unto 2,300 evening morning, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. The word days is a translation of evening and morning. So the Daniel 8:26 is talking about the vision of the evening and morning. It's a reference to Daniel 8:14, okay? Thus, in the vision, as in the explanation, the sanctuary being cleansed, thus in the vision, as in the explanation, the sanctuary being cleansed, and the explanation about it being cleansed, both occur after the symbol for Rome. And yet, look at these texts. The vision of the evening and morning, the vision about the sanctuary being cleansed, was not explained to him, as were the elements that preceded it, the ram, the goat, and the little horn. He says he didn't understand what it was about. He says very clearly in the last verse of Daniel 8, I none understood it. What didn't he understand? The part of the vision about the sanctuary being cleansed. Don't miss this. Everything else was explained but that part. Thus, Daniel 8 ends with the part about the sanctuary being cleansed remaining unexplained. This point will become important later when we come to Daniel 9. Thus, what do we have in Daniel 8? Look at what we've got. We've got Medo-Persia, the ram, the he-goat, Greece, the little horn, pagan and papal Rome, and the sanctuary cleansed. Now, I want you to think about something for a minute here with me. Daniel 8 consists of just 4 elements. The ram, a goat, a little horn, and the sanctuary cleansed. Okay, how much? Study this till you see it. Ram, goat, little horn, sanctuary cleansed. 4 elements, no more. The ram was Medo-Persia, a major power of great importance in the history of the world and the history of God's people. Okay, that's the one. Then comes the goat, Greece, a major power of great importance in the history of the world and the history of God's people. Then came the little horn, Rome, which was a major power in the history of the world and in the history of God's people for sure. Okay, now think about this. Of the 4 events, 3 are of major importance in the history of the world and the history of God's people. Now think about this point. If the first 3, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome, are of such significance, what does that automatically tell us about the 4th event, the cleansing of the sanctuary, the event that climaxes the vision? Of course, it tells us that whatever this was, it was of major importance, okay? Climaxing, as it were, the first 3 events. See, I've told people, I don't care what you think about the cleansing of the sanctuary is. Even if you reject what we as Adventists say, it still has to be something of major significance. I mean, Medo-Persia was major significance, Greece was major significance, Rome, and then the 4th element, the climactic element, whatever it is, that's got to be of major significance. And as far as I know, Adventists are the only one who give it any significance at all. And what is it that deserves not only to be placed among these major events, what is it that it should climax it? Well, here's what it is. It's the great judgment depicted in Daniel 7 that leads to the end of the world and establishment of God's final kingdom. Is that great enough for you? Let's look at the parallels between the 3 chapters we have studied so far. This is really the point where all that has come before leads to. You must take the time to see these parallels for yourself. If you do, you'll have pretty much all that you need to know and understand what's going on here. Look at these parallels here. This is crucial. We've got Babylon in Daniel 2, Babylon in Daniel 7, same events. As we saw, Babylon's not mentioned in Daniel 8 because it's pretty much soon to fade away. Then we got Medo-Persia, Daniel 2, Daniel 7, Daniel 8. Okay? All the same events in the same sequence in perfect parallel. Then comes Greece all the way through. Daniel 2, Daniel 7, Daniel 8, a perfect parallel. Then there's Daniel, as in Daniel 2 is Rome, Daniel 7 is Rome, and Daniel 8 is Rome. Perfect parallel. Then following the chronological and historical sequence that we have in Daniel 7, a great judgment scene that leads to the end of the world. Remember, that came up right after that phase of Rome. And in perfect parallel, and that is in perfect parallel to the cleansing of the sanctuary, which leads to the end of the little horn, as it did in Daniel 7, leads to the end of the world, a demise that comes without hand. Just as it was with the stone in Daniel 2, the stone that ended the world as we know it. The point is, folks, study this chart. If you need to stop the video here, study this from your Bible. Let it burn in your brain. See this parallel between Daniel 2, Daniel 7, and Daniel 8. Folks, if this was all that we had, we would have enough to know that the cleansing of the sanctuary in Daniel 8 is the same thing as the heavenly judgment in Daniel 7, and it occurs after the specific time frame of the little horn power and before the second coming of Jesus. Again, we have been given in Daniel 7 our first apocalyptic time prophecy, one rooted in something as firm as world history itself. And it's after this time frame, it's after that specific frame that the judgment occurs. And that judgment is the same thing as the cleansing of the sanctuary. Thus, look at it like this. You start out Babylon. Babylon ends in mid-6th century BC. Then you got Medo-Persia, ends somewhere 4th century BC. Then Greece until 2nd century BC. Then you've got Rome, pagan and papal Rome, depicted with our first apocalyptic time prophecy, 1260 years, that takes us into the 18th century. If you want specifically 1798, then after that date, you've got a judgment in heaven, which is the same thing as the cleansing of the sanctuary, and it all ends with God establishing his eternal kingdom. Again, God has given us a foundation as solid and immovable and as verifiable as history itself, world history itself. And it's on this incredibly firm foundation of world empires that he has revealed to us this pre-Advent judgment and the general time frame for it, after 1798, but before the second coming of Jesus. Now, we're still not done. We can nail this down even more precisely, which is what I want to do. First, I want you to notice with me something about the 3 chapters that we have studied. Daniel 2 was a dream, and then a complete explanation of the dream. Daniel 7 was a vision, and then a complete explanation of the vision. Daniel 8 was a vision, but then only a partial explanation of the vision. Remember what we saw. The vision about the evening, and the part of the vision about the evening and morning, the 2300 days of verse 14 was not explained. He didn't understand it. Daniel 8, 26 and 27 again. And the vision of the evening and mornings was true. Okay, notice he's emphasizing that it's true. And I was astonished at the vision, but none understood it. He didn't understand the final part of the whole vision, the part about the vision of the 2300 evenings and mornings. So look at this. Daniel 2, you got a dream and a full explanation. Daniel 7, a dream or a vision and a full explanation. Daniel 8, a vision and a partial explanation. Of the 4 elements in Daniel 8, the ram, the goat, the little horn, and the sanctuary being cleansed, only the part about the sanctuary being cleansed. The vision of the evening and morning was not explained. Daniel was very clear that he didn't understand the specific part of what was shown to him. The crucial point is that the last time we see Daniel not having an understanding of anything was in regards to the vision about the cleansing of the sanctuary in Daniel 8:14. That was the only part of the vision in Daniel 8 that was not explained, the only part he did not understand.